Hi there, sorry about the different screens there, had trouble getting back. Anyways, this video is about Rogue with Nightblade. So, Nightblade is really great on fights that have more than one target. Even if they only have two targets in the fight, it is quite useful for that. Um, it has great burst capabilities every 1 minute for AoE, and then pretty good sustained. I don't know how out of in Storm Legion I could pull better sustained DPS with Nightblade over Blade Dancer. I don't know if that is true with Nightmare Tide. Barely ever touch Blade Dancers, so I don't really know yet. But any fights where it's like the triplets in Ren of Fate, where there's two targets for a majority of the fight, Nightblade really does pull ahead. So we'll just kind of show here with the two boss practice dummies here. So anyways, Nightblade spec I have currently 5 Assassin, 6-1 Nightblade, and 10 Ranger is currently what I'm using. 5 in Assassin, increasing your critical hit chance by 5%. In Ranger, 5 in Eagle Eye, increasing your critical hit chance by 5%. So there's an extra 10% crit chance right there. And then I went to increasing attack power and weapon damage by 10% wilderness training in Ranger. Other than that, 61 Nightblade. So for dungeons, I have planar conservation on. Outside of that, you want to use energy manipulation in raids. And that aggressive defense, 61 mastery. Adamant resolve. This one is very big because this one reduces cooldown of death from the shadows. Let me see. Death from the shadows is deals a bit of death damage and casts fiery spike onto the target every, well, because of the cooldown reduction every 15 seconds, and rewards 2 combo points. So really good ability, really good amount of damage every 15 seconds. So Adamant Resolve is a must. Level 63, I just picked up run speed because, well, Nightblade can do some range attacks, 20-meter range. They are mainly more damage in melee. So other than that, though, if you find that you're in raids getting energy starved, I would say pick up Boundless Energy instead. So that way your attacks have a 20% chance to restore 4 energy once every 3 seconds, of course. Other than that, like as I said, I picked up the Juke and Run, especially useful in PvP. But so with 65 and 63, kind of pick to the scenario. I would say energy manipulation all the time in raids, though I just use planar conversion because without a Chloro or Bard running Fervor or something, you can get quite energy starved. And for now, time focused. I'm sure there's a point where through the Ether probably becomes more useful, doing 7% of your damage as additional ethereal damage. But for now, I've been just using timed focus with every attack, single target anyways, puts up a delayed damage of almost 25 or 250 2,500 ethereal damage almost. Stacks up to 5 times and then it explodes, or explodes after a few seconds. I know that too. It's probably like 10 seconds. So I'm pretty sure that there's probably going to be a point where through the ether out DPSs, but for now use time focus. Every once in a while, if you want to test that out, if your through the ether starts pulling ahead, go ahead and test it. And so with Nightblade, I have a few macros here. AoE, single target, Scourge of Darkness macro, and then one for Ebon Fury. And the finisher one as well. So finisher macro looks like this. Blazing Strike and Flame Thrust. What those are, sorry, wrong page there. Oh, before we get into macros anyways, is you do get Virulent Poison from Assassin weapon buff, but the weapon buffs Nightblade count as the same buffs, and you can only have 2 up. So this one does give a 50% chance, but it deals just under 2k water damage. Ranger, there's nothing for us in there. And buffs in Nightblade, you have Fell Blades, Smoldering Blades, Ebon Blades, and Hellfire Blades. Fell Blades applies a healing debuff and siphons stolen heals to heal you. Great for PvP. Ebon Blades is 100% tack, so this is our main buff that we want. Deals additional just under 1k death damage. Debuffs the enemy, though, causing them to take 5% more damage per stack from us. Max of 3 stacks, so increasing our damage to them by 15%. Hellfire Blades just deals additional fire damage, almost 3k. 30% chance though, and Smoldering Blades, another 30% chance, but it does almost 5k fire damage over 12 seconds, but it's, excuse me, a little bit of hiccups. But it stacks up to 5 times, and when it gets to the 5th stack, it consumes all to deal another 10k damage right off the bat. So because of that, like even though it has a 20% less chance than the Virulent Poison, it does deal more damage in the end. I believe it's worth it, so I use Ebon Blades and Smoldering Blades for PvE. As always, I do suggest that you go through and see how your talents affect different things. I might forget some things as I don't recall everything because it's been a while since I looked through the whole soul tree. But I do recommend you do it yourself, kind of feel like how things affect others, how they modify them, so that way you do better ones than the others. So with our finisher, we have 4 finishers, and Scourge of Darkness, your next 10 weapon attacks deal additional damage. I have that macroed with Dark Descent actually. Let me try and find where Dark Descent actually is. Dark Descent, the rogue's next 3 finishers do not consume any combo points. Reason for this is especially in AoE centers, like if you're doing trash, your Scourge of Darkness, when you use your AoE finisher, it does all that damage to anything. So I just have those macroed together. So anytime you use your Scourge of Darkness, you have 2 more finishers before you can start doing your builders again. Other finishers, so this macro will be on the guild forms as well. Other macros are for finishers are Blazing Strike and Flame Thrust. So Blazing Strike is melee range, single target. Flame Thrust is 20 meter range, single target finisher. Flame Blitz is our AoE finisher. So I have that by itself. As you can see on my bar, Flame Blitz is right on my shift 4, where my finisher macro is on my 4 main bar. The DD macro, as I called it, Dark Descent, Scourge of Darkness, I have both on my 3 ones. That way, if I'm doing AoE, I just hold down shift and do shift 3 a couple times so I can get Dark Descent and Scourge of Darkness, and then I just go back into my Flame Blitz. Other than that this is my main spam macro, adding in this at the moment though. So energy manipulation does not take a global a GCD, so you can also apply it before pulls. Put it up first, so that way if you have a boss targeted, you don't end up doing a damage ability before getting your energy manipulation up. So this is just a simplified macro to get more DPS out of it. There is ways that you can buff Death from the Shadows so it deals more damage when you want to use it. But once you have all your buffs up, the ones that get applied in combat, they stay up, so then you have max DPS. What I'm talking about here is there's a talent called Heat Retention. Each damaging combo point generating ability is used, you gain a stack of Heat Retention, which increases, each stack increases damage done by 3%. So that's an extra 15% damage when you're at 5 stacks. And when you get up to 5 stacks, you gain internal heat, which increases your finisher damages by 30%. But nothing takes those away. The only things that take away from those is if you're out of combat for too long or you die. So once you're up to full stacks of those, internal heat and the heat retention, you're doing the max DPS your builders can do. So I find, just for simple case, to just have the one spam macro. Now, there is something else, though, that changes from the spam macro. So I might want to actually think of making another macro here. But where is it? Blazing Strike, Flame Thrust, Dust Strike, Twilight Force deal 6% more damage, and an additional 30% more damage if the enemy is below 30%. So with that, our Primal Strike is not included in that. The difference between Primal Strike is that it does max at my stats at the moment, Syndicate death damage, awards 1 combo point, melee range. Twilight Force That's 22 energy, where Twilight Force takes an extra 4 energy, 26 energy, deals 7.6k death damage, and if the target is able to be movement impaired, it does that, and it rewards 1 combo point. This is our range spam macro, or spam attack, Twilight Force, where Primal Strike normally is our main attack. You could test doing it where you just use Twilight Force and never use Primal Strike. Because I don't think there's anything that really... Crit chance of Primal Strike is higher, and Dust Strike by 15%. So you could crit more often with Primal Strike, but below 30%, the others would do more damage by 30%. So it's a balancing act between there if you want. Since this is just a basic guide, get used to these, and then if you want, start thinking about how to increase your DPS by changing some things around with how the talents affect other things. But so I suggest this is a spam macro. Then as well, this is a kind of burn macro. Dusk Strike deals, with my stats, over 9k death damage, but what it does is it applies a stack of emptiness, which increases damage done by Dust Strike by 10%, but it's increased by 15% per stack. I think it's max of 5 stacks. So that's a 75% increase, I believe, at max stacks for energy cost. So you end up getting very energy starved if you keep trying to hit Dust Strike. With this, Ebon Fury is combat buff 1 minute thing. Dust Strike and Twilight Force do not cost any energy, last for 10 seconds. So what this macro does is, if you're in melee, you're doing the hard-hitting Dust Strike, and you gain stacks, and it doesn't use up any energy for 10 seconds, and if you fail to be in melee range, it uses the Twilight Force. To increase more DPS, I do suggest having Dust Strike itself off, so that way you can maybe get up to 5 stacks, and then you want to use your Ebon Fury while at max stack, so all the free costing ones hit the hardest. So those are my macros. Again, they'll be on the guild forum. So Nightblade has its own stealth. 30 seconds, because we don't have Assassin that has the unlimited duration stealth. We do have some stealth abilities. Smother debilitates and does some damage, but that would be more in PvP. Lost Hope incapacitates for 15 seconds. Can only affect one enemy. Does not break stealth, so if you need to sneak by. We have Ebon Terror, which confuses for 2 seconds, rewards 2 combo points, and does some damage. Again, more PvP. And then we have Dark Melody. Damage increases rogue's damage done by 20% for 8 seconds and rewards 2 combo points. So you want to start off every fight stealth. Gotta make sure how fast the tank pulls after the ready check clears, because you might want to, everybody needs to be ready, of course, because you only have a 30-second stealth window. You don't want stealth to fall off just as the tank pulls, because then you can't be using Dark Melody. Sorry, God, if I... Yep, forgot this AoE here. AoE builder macro casts Fiery Chains and then Weapon Flare. Fiery Chains hits up to 6 enemies, and you have a chance, additional 50% chance for each enemy hit to add additional combo points, so you can get combo points fairly quickly with that, but it's also a 6-second cooldown. Weapon Flare, some damage up to 8 enemies, rewards 1 combo point. So has some good AoE. On packs like in Return to Empyrean Core, the packs to the Mad Doctor where there's 4 targets, I can end up spiking over 140k damage per second until they start dying, and then my DPS starts falling down. So Fiery Spike I also have out in case I need to apply it just manually. We do have a couple abilities that do apply it, but this is a dot that stacks up. It does say 3 stacks here, but I think our talents increase it to 5. And over the duration of 10 seconds, it hits a lot. You do not want Fiery Spikes to fall off. It's a big DPS, especially on 2 different targets. If you have 5 stacks on both targets, you have a lot of damage happening. Dust to Dawn, it's in our spam macro. It increases the damage of Blazing Strike and Flame Thrust by 20% for 60 seconds. It's 30-second cooldown, so you have that buff permanently as long as you don't forget to hit your spam macro, which has Dust to Dawn in it. And Blazing Strike and Flame Thrust are just our single target finishers, so no use of that in our AoE macros. Again, we went over the finishers. 1-minute combat ability called Living Flame. So up to 10 nearby enemies start take quite a little fire damage over 5 seconds, but as well, about every second it applies fiery spikes onto affected enemy. So it's a great way to get fiery spikes up quickly on a lot of targets. This is our 1-minute burst AoE ability, is Living Flame. Even in single target or dual target, you kind of want to use it to get those stacks up quickly. Dark Descent is in our DD macro. Ebon Fury is in our Burn macro, what I called my Burn macro anyways. Touch of Darkness is another 1-minute one. For the next 6 seconds, deals additional death damage, but it drains 5 energy, 5 power, or 3% of the enemy's maximum mana. So really great in PvP. Does affect some bosses as well. Threngar, which you need to drain his mana, definitely works on him. Other than that, it's just some additional mana. No global cooldown. As you can see, I just have it on a place for me to click it myself. You could just, if you really wanted to, you could just put it into your spam macro kind of thing. Twilight Transcendence is a defensive one. It reduces the damage we take. Does it reduce? Okay, it removes all curses, disease, and poisons. Reduces damage taken by 50%, damage done by 40%, but it also restores half of our max health over 4 seconds. So really good defensive cooldown there. Can save your butt plenty of times. We do have some control. Dark Containment incapacitates for 15 seconds. Can be used on trash, or it could for, of course, PvP. We do have a teleport 15 meter forward ability, removes all crowd control effects, and increases movement speed by 50% for 5 seconds. Cooldown 30 seconds. So those are some of our nice abilities. Ranger, we really don't use anything in Ranger. All our stuff does better damage. Assassin, same thing. Um, almost 7k damage from Savage Strike as a builder, where Nightblade's Primal Strike is a little bit weaker, I think. Nope, just a little bit stronger, plus as well, we have points that make it higher crit. So everything we use is in Nightblade. So, now to just kind of see in action, because it does take a while to get DPS as dungeon queue, I'm just going to do this as on the dummies here. So as always, you want to start off fights stealth, so that way you can hit Dark Malady. Since there's 2 targets here, I'm going to use Liquid Flame. I'm at 5 points, I'm going to use my DD macro, which allows me 3 finishers. And then just go into single target. Every time though I have max points, because there's 2 targets here, I'm using my AoE finisher, because it does spread those fiery spikes to that other target. So see here, fiery spikes, 5 targets. If I just do it as a single target finisher, it refreshes the fiery spikes just on the 1. So if there's always more than 1 target, you want to use your AoE finisher. And pretty much is keep on using your main spam macro. Scourge of Darkness K alert telling you how long you have additional damage. So pretty much you want to make sure you're in range of attacks. If you have to run out for some odd reason, make sure that you're within 20 meter range to get that additional damage and waste that cooldown. And that is, if you want, you can start using our Dust Strike, which this is the Stacks of Emptiness, increasing the damage, and also increasing the energy cost. So once you're at 5 stacks, you can then use the Nightblade Burn macro, which you have 10 seconds to spam Dust Strike without ever using energy, which does a lot of damage. Then, and again, as I said, with 2 targets, you kind of want to make sure you use your AoE finisher to keep those fire spikes up. Outside of the burn part, you can make sure that you keep up some stacks of emptiness. Using that attack every once in a while won't drain your mana, but of course if you use like 2 successful attacks in a row, your energy can be pretty starved. So what I tend to do is I try and keep the 5 stacks up as often as possible. And sometimes I mess up a little. So once you get into the hang of it, because I'm explaining, I'm forgetting to do some things. But just getting with the K alerts, knowing which buttons do what for your macros, you'll get a big hang of it. Pretty simple spec. I always enjoyed it. I loved it. Being able to easily do some ranged and some melee. I found it was quite welcomed on, well, for me, for raids, where Assassin you had to make sure you're constantly in melee range, unless you did the Nightblade Sin specs, which then you had some range of capabilities. So, just kind of show you the AoE here. So, always good to start off with that Waiting Flame, Dark Malady, DD, stand. There we can do a couple of missions right off the bat. You can see, like, spiked over 200 at one point there. Obviously, there's a lot of targets here, though, that it's hitting. For AoE, you definitely start noticing the energy starvation. Where single target, unless you're using Dust Strike, you should never be energy starved. That's kind of also why for dungeons with trash packs, I just use the Rogue's version to reduce energy cost. You never know if you'll have a fluoro as the healer. So, as you can see, almost 1 minute into the forest, definitely energy starved, but I'm still pulling over 120k sustained on these targets here, and my living plane's back up to use. So, really good, decent sustained. AoE, pretty damn good, like if you want to see single target. I won't explain as I fight. Great boss dummy here. So as you can see, just about a minute parse on pulling, consistently above 50k DPS. Getting a little angry star there because I was using Dust Strike, but like what single target self-buffed, you're still pulling good DPS. As I said here, buff spar eternal heat, increasing finish damage by 30%, heat retention increasing damage by 3% per stack. Night Rage increasing Blazing Strike and Flame Thrust by 20%, which is our single target finishers. So that's just with me. Single target, it's people pretty good number single target. Does get better single target DPS below 30%. Other than that, though, is definitely succeeds on dual targets and more. I always enjoyed it, even though it was a little bit less DPS than like Assassin or Nightblade Sin. They might pull slightly more DPS, but it's not too far behind. Well, back in Storm Legion, it wasn't too far behind, and because of any disconnects, it really pulled ahead. So, just giving more parse on the 2 target here. I think that one is still close enough, so there's going to be some padding. Is there a better 2 target dummy? 3 target. Yeah, let's just do this one here, 3 target. So, in Iron Tombs where there's the 3 bosses up, this will be more like that. So, I will do the single target. All I'm doing is keeping up the fire spikes on the other targets by using my finisher. See, 3 targets here, easily pulling self-buff, almost 80k. So those fiery spikes do quite a bit of damage. Here, I'll just go break combat now. And let's look at ACT here. So, normal practice dummy, those were the last 3 that I was attacking. Fiery Spike was doing 20% of my damage. That's with 3 targets there, I believe. Where Raid Boss Dummy. Fiery Spike, 9%. That was just 1 target. So, Fiery Spike's at-mat stacks is one of your main sources of DPS. So that's why it does really well on 2 or more targets. Expert Boss Dummy, like this was like a little bit more Fire Spike, 14%. But this was the parts where I wasn't keeping it up as well. It was dropping down on that second target. So play around with it. I quite enjoy Nightblade. I hope you do too. And I said, fights where there's more than 1 target, it is very, very useful. You'll get more DPS out of Nightblade than any other spec for dual targets. So triplets, especially in Ren of Fate, this is the spec you should be using because it will pull more DPS than any other spec that you can use on that fight, just because of its abilities to keep up Fiery Spike on that second target. Hope this was useful to you and everything goes well. Take care.